Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, one in a series of virtual sessions the Center on Global Energy Policy is hosting as part of the 7th Annual Columbia Global Energy Summit. My name is Philippe Benoit, and I am an Adjunct Senior Research Scholar at the Center on Global Energy Policy at Columbia SIPA. Today, we will be discussing the interplay of electricity, development, and sustainability, using India to draw out important lessons. Let me quickly say that this event is being webcast live, and the full video will be available online later today. For those of you joining us via Zoom, you can submit a question for us at any time by clicking on the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Now, turning to this morning's session, I'm very pleased to welcome Mr. Gurdeep Singh, the Chairman and Managing Director of Ntpc Limited, which is not only the largest integrated power utility in India, it is a global energy leader and among the world's largest state-owned power companies. Mr. Singh has served as Chairman and Managing Director of Ntpc since 2016. And Mr. Singh, congratulations on your recent extension for another term. Prior to that, he held leadership positions at several internationally renowned energy companies, such as PowerGen and AES. And I hope that during our discussion today, we'll be able to touch upon how his experience leading a large state-owned power company compares to his years in private sector ones. Mr. Singh also holds other international and sustainability positions, such as co-chair for the Stewardship Board for the Platform of Energy and Minerals of the World Economic Forum, and as a member of the Clean Energy Ministerial Hydrogen Initiative Advisory Group, which is coordinated by the IEA. We will start off with introductory remarks by Mr. Singh, to be followed by a discussion between him and me, after which I will turn to questions from our audience. Once again, welcome, Gurdeep. And while it is still morning here in New York, a good evening to you where you are. The microphone is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Philippe. Good evening from this side and good morning to all back in US who have joined from the Western part, and good afternoon to some people who are joining from other geographies. And thanks Columbia University for inviting me on this talk. And thanks again, Diana, for a wonderful introduction. So let me just tell something about Ntpc. Ntpc was started in 1975, primarily as National Thermal Power Corporation. And today we have grown to almost 65.5 gigawatt of the capacity. And we are no more coal-based power generator. Way back in 2005, we dropped the thermal and we remained only Ntpc Limited. As of today, we supply almost 1/4 of the electricity to the grid and in turn to the consumers. So I can just give you one kind of figure that we serve almost around 340 million people, which is almost, I think, equivalent to the entire population of the US. And that gives a lot of responsibility. As Philip just mentioned, being a state-owned enterprise, the responsibility is, the objective is that we must provide affordable and reliable power. And now, in the last few years, rather almost about a decade back, we started that, realizing that going forward, we will have to turn to transition route, and we have already embarked on that journey. And today we are focusing on mainly about the new capacities, which is going to be the renewable. And it's not only the only generation capacity, but we are already working on the green hydrogen side. We have to really work on the carbon capture and We will have to go for electric mobility, which we have already started. As of today, we also run many of the buses in the island of Andaman Nicobar, which we have enabled, and waste to energy. This is going to be kind of the transition when we are going towards, I think, everybody talks about net zero, whether it's 2050 for some countries, maybe earlier for some, and maybe little later for others. But we as a leading power company, we will have to see that we do everything possible, which is providing clean, affordable power to our consumers. And at the same time, we really help the grid to become more and more deepening the electricity access to the consumers, and at the same time going towards the greener side. I think this is the very, very important, and I'm very happy to mention that Government of India has been very proactive. In fact, we really work in close coordination, and we are one of the country who had been on track for as per the Paris Accord. What we committed about the 40% of the capacity will be from the non-fossil. We are already at about 37, 38%. And it will be by 22, we will be really increasing is much faster. There is a huge opportunities, the country which we are trying to see that we really take advantage of that. We are not only investing ourselves in the solar and wind, but also we are enabling the investors who have the problem of first time coming, or they have the kind of risk of the payment. We have signed the power purchase agreement, and in turn we take the risk of the payment risk, so that we can bring down the cost, and we can really see that the more and more renewable capacity comes in the country. So we are not only the generator, but we are going towards in entirety that we become the integrated utility. And in this direction, the hydrogen, green hydrogen and carbon capture, I think this is going to be very important. And through this talk also, I would request that whosoever is the technology developers, and especially towards the carbon capture and utilization, I think sequestration is a little difficult. So we will be looking at aggressively carbon capture and utilization. We are carrying out some of the works, whether we can really try to see that we can make methanol from carbon capture and green hydrogen, so that it is becoming a self-sustaining model. I would hurriedly add here that we had been actively participating into the plantation, and we have already planted almost around 35 million trees across the country. Our operations are pan-India. We supply the power to the pan-India basis, except the few islands which are not connected with the grid. Incidentally, we are one of the country where we have invested heavily that we have the one integrated grid. So with this smaller the kind of introduction, let me just reiterate that we are moving towards from a coal-based company towards the integrated energy company. So let me stop here, and more than happy to discuss further on the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Gurdeep. Thank you very much for that very rich set of introductory remarks. And I think something obviously that jumps out that I think many people don't realize, including myself, is how big you are. And so similarly, how important you're going to be, not only in terms of what happens in India, but really at a global level. So I think we're going to come back and touch upon some of the issues you raised, for example, CCUS and hydrogen and the like. But before we do that, what I would like to touch upon is we've all been reading about COVID's terrible impact on India and its people. And I was wondering if you could share with us what role electricity, and in particular Ntpc, have been playing in helping the country meet this crisis.
Yeah, I think we all know that what the COVID-19 is really, starting from year 2020. it has been giving a very tough time to entire humanity. And I think the role of the electricity has been realized much more important during these times. Because if we just consider that electricity is not reliable, what kind of situation can it lead to? And we, being the leading electricity supplier, we have our team. I must give the credit to the team which is working across the country. We have made sure that we are supplying reliable power during this tough time also. And at present, I believe that the peak for the time being is behind us. We are seeing that there is a downside in the new cases which is coming. But during this time also, we had made sure that we are not only doing everything possible for our people and our associates, but also try to help the communities around us and make sure that the power is supplied without any interruption, so that the hospitals really work and the supply of the oxygen really is taken care. All other logistics are also, which are dependent mainly on the electricity, are also helping in this kind of. We have taken use kind of mission mode to go for the vaccination for each and everyone, not only our employees and our associates, but also the communities around our the businesses. So I think this is electricity has been the single most enabler to cope up with this and try to control as soon as possible, whether it is in the hospitals or whether it is the homes or it is in the any other the value chain in that or the supply chain in that direction.
No, thank you for that, and good to hear that there's been some positive evolution, and we hope that continues. And I think also a very important point that you made, and an important reminder, I know many in our audience already know this, is the importance of energy and electricity when it comes to providing health services and so much other social services that are critical. Which kind of maybe is a segue into the next topic I would like to touch upon, which is really one of the critical central topics of this particular conversation, which is the role of electricity and Ntpc when we look over the longer term to India's future development. Clearly, electricity will necessarily need to play an important role. And in fact, some have projected that the power sector in India will need to grow massively over the next 20 years, potentially adding on the generation that we currently see in the European Union. So what do you see as some of the challenges and opportunities in this evolution when we look over the medium to longer term, specifically focused on this issue of development and economic growth?
Yeah, I think very important. We all know that India is fast-growing economy, and by 2030, we expect that we will become the third largest economy in the world. As of today, the electricity consumption per capita is still very low, and it is almost 1/3 of the global average. So it has to go up, and we have just to add in the about 3 years back, in 1 year, we took this kind of one mission and we connected each and every household. And within a period of 18 months, there was a connections to the new consumers which were given was almost 26 million. So that is a kind of the exercise which was taken. And there is the electricity demand is growing, which is a very good sign. I keep telling that there should be a kind of convergence. And the convergence is that it should be the energy source for wherever it is possible, it should be electricity. Whether it is for the cooking, whether it is for cooling, whether it is, because there is a lot of cooling requirement in our country, like heating requirement in the West. The electric vehicles, industry, you name it, I think then wherever there should be the kind of much more deepening of the electricity. And then we have the Herculean task to see that we really make this grid greener and greener and at the end green. I think this is what really throws a lot of opportunities. The kind of investment potential what is going to be in the next 10 years in the different sectors. In case of the renewable sector itself, for us in India is almost $20 billion per year. But overall, it may be going to much higher and maybe touching almost 1 trillion in the total ecosystem. This is one thing which is quite clear, and we are having a lot of potential for the solar. So solar is taking a kind of headway in the renewables as of now, and there is another unexplored area is offshore wind. So that is going to be, we have also joined hands with the ONGC, which is Oil and Natural Gas Commission. That is now it's Oil and Natural Gas Company. We have joined hands to try to find out and try to explore how we can go for the offshore potential tapping as soon as possible. I think this is the one area. In addition to that, I would also like to add that we have quite a sizable gas capacity with us. But incidentally, our domestic gas availability is very low, and the LNG prices are not really stable. And in fact, by the time the gas prices comes to the burner tip, this becomes very costly and in turn become unaffordable. So there is a lot of opportunity going forward when there is going to be more and more renewable is coming. I'm sure that there will be pressure on the gas prices also, and that is another one. And gas prices, once it is coming down, it will be a good kind of complementary to each other, renewable and combined cycle, which we are already having. So we have to go for renewables in a big way. We have to go for the another one is the energy efficiency. I think energy efficiency we have already demonstrated to the world that the LED program, which was a demand driven, we created a kind of centralized demand, and the prices of the LEDs fell down by 80%. So it came down to 20% of this what we started. So I think there is many opportunities in the country, and the another technologies what we were talking about, whether it is going to be green hydrogen or CCU, those kind of things, or the EVs. I think that's what will keep coming in us. Thank you.
Thanks for that. I mean, in some ways, your intervention actually anticipated a lot of the questions that we have been getting, which have to do with how you'll sort of deal with the climate constraint. You've touched upon issues of solar, offshore wind. I want to come back to that very briefly in just a second. You also touched upon the issue of affordability, which I want to make sure that we do circle back on. But when we think about all the challenges that an Ntpc has, and very much struck by the story that it used to be thermal in its name and it's no longer thermal in its name, which probably positions you well even from a naming perspective in terms of the low carbon transition. But what do you see as some of the challenges for Ntpc and for India specifically on this low carbon transition, given the fact that it's a developing country and basically it's still a lower middle income country?
Well, I think, Philippe, the challenge is almost quite clear, that transition cannot happen overnight. It is going to take some time. And even our predominantly dependence on the coal, we are doing all possible things to see that the transition become faster, but it has to be at a pace which becomes not very painful. And I must add here is that availability and affordability of electricity is very important in the transition and the climate change, as what we are saying that only going for the renewables. So I'm sure that there will be much faster addition of the renewables, and there will transition is going to be taking place faster, but I think we will have to live with for some time with the coal capacity. And the last thing what you would like is that there should be a supply constraint on the electricity. So we must keep those things into mind. Having no electricity will be really costly affair. I think that's not going to help the climate, because then the people will start using the other sources of the energy, which is going to be much more environment friendly rather than unenvironment friendly, which I was just mentioning. So what we have to really look at is that as we go as per our plan, Government of India has already set up the target that we will have 450 gigawatt by 2030, the renewable energy. And in that, I think there is enough opportunities, there is enough kind of scope. So this is a Herculean kind of objective which has been taken up. And I'm sure that what we have really shown that today we have 94 gigawatt in case of the solar capacity in the country, and there are another around 20 to 30 gigawatt under construction. So we are trying our level best to reach to the 175 gigawatt by 22, and this is 450 gigawatt should not be a kind of bigger problem. And in that we have to start looking at the different policy intervention, different regulatory framework, and much more than we should be really making the kind of enabling environment for the investment. By the way, we already have, the Government of India has taken several steps for the last many years now. At least in the last 5 years, it has been a very 5 to 6 years, it has been very proactive. We have the 100% FDI. We have the first run. It's a rather must run. There is no backing down of the, and there is this ISTS, what we call it, the grid is free for the transmission. So there is a kind of, all kind of incentives are given for this renewable energy, so that we are going at a faster pace. And we have become, incidentally, the other day I was mentioning that we designed our power plant way back around 20, 30 years back. And those plants are now started being called as balancing power. So earlier we used to say this is a base load, but nowadays it is being called a balancing power, because the first preference is coming towards the renewable. And so those proactive policies from the Government of India are really helping a lot. And if I can just add one here, that a ton of CO2 emission at any point of the globe will have the similar impact. So I think it should be a kind of helping each other. I think we have only one Earth. So we should really see that it's not only one part of the world, but the entire the globe has to really go for the kind of the carbon free or the net zero, or what we should really go up the less decarbonization and the less carbon than intensive the sources of it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I'm starting to create actually a ledger of open questions, which I will circle back on, the affordability one and this issue of international finance. And as much as I had said we would turn to questions afterwards from the audience, some of them have come in and are very pertinent to what you were just talking about. So I'm going to interject with them right now. One of the questions we got from the audience has to do with the issue of the transmission and distribution system, recognizing that when you're looking at a larger amount of renewables in your system, solar and the like, you're potentially looking at a different type of configuration. So maybe if you could sort of describe what you see in terms of what may need to happen in terms of your transmission distribution system to accommodate this significantly larger amount of solar, offshore wind and the like.
See, again, I think as a Government of India and as the transmission planner, we have the authority called Central Electricity Authority, which really plans that what is kind of the network is required. And we have invested heavily. We have even invested in the name of the green corridors, so that we can enable the power flow from the more than a potential solar and the wind areas towards the less potential than areas. And today I have great satisfaction to say that we probably are the largest integrated grid. One grid, one nation, one grid. the power can flow from any part of the country towards the other part. And that has really helped the kind of putting the renewables and putting the more and more wind and solar and see that there is no bottleneck into this. So we have invested very heavily in the grid, and we are mindful that what is going to be required. So there is the planning side and from the policy side, both really work together and try to see that the more and more renewables are absorbed in the grid. And there are many policies, as I said, which really helps and which really promote rather than help, which promotes the renewable energy. And the other, whether it's a coal or then very limited gas, they becomes the kind of balancing power. So that is what is we are just working on that. And today, when the renewable energy is becoming even cheaper than the fuel cost, forget about the total cost, but the fuel cost itself, then it is all the way that it is going to help the grid and it is going to help the consumer to bring down the cost. And we are here as the largest utility to see that we remain almost every time ready to see that we supply the power as per the requirement of the grid and try to give the first chance and the must chance to the renewables.
So just touching on some of your last comments there, which is really an opportunity to go back to something you mentioned earlier. You talked about how the cost of renewables are coming down, and earlier on when you were talking about gas, you talked about the issues of affordability. So maybe if you could sort of describe what you see as some of the opportunities again and challenges as you decarbonize and you expand your system, specifically on the issue of affordability. You spoke a lot throughout this discussion about the need to increase supply, but obviously there's a critical need to increase supply and still keep it affordable for your population. So if you could sort of touch upon the affordability issue in particular.
Electricity is more or less still a regulated sector for us. And we are working then on the creating market and deepening the markets. But even if you see that if there is a supply side, we are able to bring the cheaper power, and that is also cleaner power. At the end, in a regulated phenomena, this really reduces the cost of the power to the end consumers. And more and more renewable is coming. I'm sure that the cost is going to come further down. We started, let me just share with you, when I was in Gujarat, we had commissioned the first 1 megawatt plant. That was way back in 2009, 2010. That was the real news. And the then Honorable Chief Minister and now Honorable Prime Minister, he inaugurated that plant. Today, we are talking about the gigawatt plants. And the cost what we started was almost 15 rupees. And today it is coming to almost less than 2 rupees. So it is 1.99 Indian rupees. So that is the kind of phenomenal China, this what happened. And ultimately, I think whatever we are doing at the end, if we are not helping the consumer, I think we will not go in a long way. So that has to be always kept in mind. We have to really make sure that our grid is resilient. Our grid is really taking care of all kind of supply side and all kind of demand side. And that is, we are always mindful and we keep investing into grid in that requirement.
So you're very much hoping and looking towards a triple win: more, greener, and affordable.
Yes.
But having said all that, that obviously will require a significant amount of investment. So let's come back to the issue you mentioned about potentially the importance of international finance. So if you could maybe describe how you sort of see the role of the international community, maybe in terms of supporting India in making this transition. And in that regard, I'd like you really to focus in on two key dimensions. One is multilateral institutions and the like, but the second is international private capital. So how do you see those playing an important role in supporting Ntpc in this transition?
I think I just touched briefly on that some time back. that we have enabled the policies, we have enabled the framework. Like when I said that we have signed the power purchase agreement so that there is no payment risk. Our rating is the sovereign rating. So we are in a position to raise at a very, very competitive rate our energy funding. Then we supply the power to all the distribution companies in the country. And we see that we are able to collect that money from the consumers and try to see that they are the developers who are coming in the form of the FDI or in the form of any way, they are being paid on time. In addition to that, I think when I just said that there is a 100% FDI which is allowed, then there is a kind of from the policy side that you are going to be given the must-run status. So I think apart from the technological risk, which is I think minimal, there is almost de-risking of the project is taken care, and so that is one part of through the development or then kind of. The another one is we had raised like the green bonds, and we keep tapping the international market, and we had got quite at a very, very competitive rate. As I said, that being the our rating being the sovereign rating, so we are in a position to raise capital, and that too for the renewables. I think there should not be any problem. But having said this, let me try to just hurriedly here. As I said, the 1 ton of CO2, whether it is released in Delhi or whether it is in Washington or anywhere, I think it will be having the same impact on the globe. So I think from the financing institutes, from whether it's or whether it is multilaterals, whether it's private investments, I think the expectation of the returns should be commensurate. And that should be when you are coming towards the climate change or trying to help the humanity and to decarbonize this world. I think the expectation should also be in that line. If you expect very, very high returns, so that is the business out of this. So please, I think there should be a kind of balance, fine balance between the your kind of expectation for the return and the kind of what you are contributing towards the climate. But I think as far as Ntpc is concerned and as far as India is concerned, I'm sure that by now almost every investor knows that what kind of policies and enabling policies we are having. The government is quite committed, and we really see that we also help more and more developers and the financial institutes to come and help us to grow this renewable faster and towards go for the decarbonization in all sector, whether it is going to be like whether it's transportation or whether it is like, as I said, with this electric vehicle, cooking, cooling, and the electricity anyway, then it's going to be very important. By the way, still we are almost around 50% in case of the emissions as far as the electricity sector is concerned, which is a very, very high. So electricity itself is a very important area. And we as Ntpc are going to be playing a very important role. So we are more than happy to really find out any kind of possibilities how we can help the investors, the developers in any way for helping. And it's a kind of to bring the investment and to see that we go greener and ultimately green.
Oh, great. I think during our Q&A session from the audience, we're going to come back to this issue of net zero because there have been a lot of questions about that. So why don't I now just transition to that to a certain extent, which is, again, for those watching online, my name is Philippe Benoit, and I'm here with Gurdeep Singh, Chairman and Managing Director of Ntpc Limited. We are discussing the interplay of power development and sustainability in India. We will now open up to questions from the audience. Just as a reminder, for those of you joining us via Zoom, you can submit a question for the panel at any time by clicking on the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Gurdeep, we have actually gotten a couple of questions on a topic that I didn't really yet have a chance to turn to, which is the role of state-owned enterprises in India's power sector. And some of the questions we got actually relate less to NTPC specifically, but rather to the dominant role that distribution companies play in India's power sector, as well as some of the challenges in terms of technical losses and the like. And I was wondering, I guess, in some ways, given your commercial relationships with the distribution companies, how do you see the role of those distribution companies in India's power sector today, and maybe as it may evolve going forward?
Again, very good question, and I just missed to mention many things what is happening towards the distribution sector. I did mention about creating market and deepening those markets, but more importantly, everyone who is interested in electricity sector of India will be knowing that the government of India has already started a process of privatization of some of the distribution companies, and already the two smaller distribution companies are in the process of that. So this is a very, very kind of path breaking which is being taken. Earlier, rather today also, except the few pockets, the bigger cities, most of the distribution companies are government companies. And so there is already a process which has been initiated. And we have to go on seeing that how we can create more and more bilateral or this kind of more and more market-related products rather than going through everything towards this, what we had been doing for the last many decades. We as NTPC, as I said, we keep interacting with our consumers, with customers. As I said, we supply power to every distribution company, and we really help them also to see that they get reliable, affordable power. I think that always comes back, and we are more than happy to play that kind of role also for any of the investors, as I just mentioned again. On the distribution and transmission losses, there has been a different policies, different plans which have been made, and I think going forward also there is this already announced something which is related with the improvement in those performance, and then they get some kind of help from the central government. So many of these the schemes what the government of India now, prepaid meter, smart meter, and this time of day meter, and etc. I think there are many schemes which are being worked out. So the bottom line is that please join, please suggest, and try to be the partner of this, be part of this, and bringing the solution to this issue, as the government of India is very committed to bring the sea change into this. We are also, by the way, we are also participating into the distribution sector. So yes, we are also participating in the bids.
Yes, no, very much. I was very much struck by some of the activities you described earlier, and in some ways very much transitioning from a traditional power producer into an integrated energy company. We had yesterday the head of BP talked about this issue, and actually we also had Philippe Benoit who presented some of the interesting work, and we'll come back to that in just a second. But just on this issue, we have another question just on this issue of state-owned enterprises. And now I'm not so much talking about the distribution sector, but really thinking more about your experience at NTPC as compared to your experience previously in working for private sector power companies. How does the fact that NTPC is owned by the government of India affect these issues of dealing with sustainability and development and the like? Maybe if you could give us some insights into that.
Okay, I think very good question. Looks to be simple, but I think it requires a little more kind of introspection and try to just give the perspective. So in a private sector, when you are working for a very small company, your main motive is to see that you meet the objective, but at the same time, your profit remains very, very big. So here, as one of the largest company, I think you have always a satisfaction of contributing towards the requirement of the sector and the growth of the nation. And in that, you have to always find a balance that how you meet the requirement of the sector and the country. At the same time, you have to make sure that you are still profitable, and so that you can raise money, you can grow faster. So that has been, I think, demonstrated by Ntpc from the inception. There are not many companies who have grown that big, and the acquisition was very, very limited. So we had been always focused on creating the new capacity, which also helps in a way for the country, because we do the new projects and the new capex and create the jobs and create a kind of capacity for the growth of the nation. Right. So this is, I think, very, very different kind of experience. And at the end, I can say with confidence that the competence of our engineers and our managers and our executives is no less, or maybe I think even better than many of the smaller companies which they can hire, because we invest a lot in the people development.
Right. So coming back to one point that has come up in a lot of the questions, really has to do with the issue of getting to net zero. You know, the IEA just issued their report. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at it, but when they talk about for the world to get to net zero by 2050, the power sector actually has to decarbonize a little earlier. You mentioned the fact that you still have coal in your system. You also mentioned the fact that you're looking at exploring CCS. So maybe if you could just drill down specifically on the issue of, CCUS. How do you see CCUS playing out in the Indian context in the power sector?
So that is all still a kind of CCU is still far away. I think that's this kind of pilot projects we are taking. But at the same time, as I mentioned, I will be more than happy to work with anyone who can really bring the solution towards this. Because in my opinion, I think that is going to be a very good solution to decarbonize and to reach towards the net zero. Because at the end, we will not be able to really wipe out the carbon from the globe so soon. Even when we are saying the net zero, net means we have brought out something net in that. So there will be some part which will be still dependent. So we must, I think, really work, and all the technology developers, they should start working on that. Our pilot project is going on, but I think that is going to be much more, because most of the people are focusing on the renewable side. But at the same time, what we have to do is that we should aggressively go on the renewables, and then try to see that we minimize the usage of the coal, and whatever we use the coal, that should be at the highest efficiency. And at the same time, I just said on the demand side, I think we should bring many kind of steps for the energy efficiency. To LED, I just mentioned, our labeling and standard, that has really helped almost in a kind of 260 million to a great extent on that side, to avoiding the capacity addition as well as the carbon emission. So I think when you are working with a state-owned enterprise, and when you are one of the largest, your responsibility becomes much bigger in all the way to see that we go towards the objective. And here the objective is go for the energy transition and try to see that we reach to that net zero at the earliest possible. I'm not here to say that whether it is going to be which year, because that depends from the country to country. And as I said, I think the investment should be coming towards not to the developed part first, but to the, I think, developing and underdeveloped countries across the globe. That has been one of the point which I had been just sharing. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Gurdeep. We actually have a lot more questions, but unfortunately we don't have enough time. But I mean, I think very much you have reflected not only the importance of India, not only the importance of an Ntpc, but also some of the very involved and intricate dynamics that are required to meet this dual objective of continuing development and growth while decarbonizing. So thank you again, Gurdeep, for joining us today and for providing those valuable insights. Understanding the challenges and opportunities that Ntpc see faces in promoting economic growth in a low carbon world are critical to achieving both national and global sustainability goals. And thank you to our audience for tuning in. As I previously mentioned, the full video recording of this event will be available on the Center on Global Energy Policy's website later today. The next session of the 7th Annual Columbia Global Energy Summit is Integrating Energy and Climate Priorities in the Gulf and Around the Globe. It'll start today at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. For a full calendar of upcoming events, visit the Center on Global Energy Policy online. We hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and we look forward to seeing you at another one of the panels at this year's summit or at a subsequent CGEP event. Once again, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Philippe, and thank you, Columbia, and for inviting.